Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Real Science Exchange, the pubcast where leading scientists and industry professionals meet over a few drinks to discuss the latest ideas and trends in animal nutrition. Spring is upon us in most parts of the world, and the heat of summer is not far behind. And the impact of that heat has on our cows is devastating. Hi, I'm Scott Sorrell, one of your hosts here at the Real Science Exchange. Managing dairy cows in high heat environments takes a combination of mechanical interventions and precise feeding. Tonight, we get the opportunity to discuss both with experts from both sides. I can't wait to jump in. And so with that, first guest I'd like to welcome is Dr. Israel Flamenbaum from Cow Cooling Solutions. Dr. Flamenbaum joins us following a very successful webinar about this topic on the Real Science Lecture Series. Thanks for joining us today, Israel. And I know you were drinking a lemonade earlier, so what's in your glass tonight, though?
Well, I saved this for the podcast, and this is Aperol Spritz, and this is a very sweet, bitter drink that I like to drink. It's with ice. Usually I drink it more in the summer than in winter, but this gives me a lot of good feeling. So cheers to everybody.
Cheers. Thank you very much. We have several guests joining us here at the pub tonight. The next will be Shimon Carmi with SH Design in Israel as well. Shimon and I have known each other for a few years, and Shimon, I don't know if the last time or one of the last times that we were together, we were on a rooftops. I think it was at Lake Como, and sipping some wine. And as I recall, we were discussing proper dairy facility design. So looking forward to having that conversation with you here today. Might prefer to be at Lake Como, but this is going to have to do. Shimon, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background? I know you started out working as a dairyman on a kibbutz, and then you worked with Affimilk. Can you kind of give us an appreciation of your background?
Well, first of all, I was born 200 meters below sea level. And my experience with dairy farming since 1969 started 200 meters below sea level. Right 1.5 miles south of the Sea of Galilee in Israel. And so my first farm research on cooling cows was actually cooling dry cows or close-up cows. This was back in 1980. We saw in this experiment that the cows 3 weeks before calving, if you cool them only twice a day in the holding pen, they will give more milk. At that time, we didn't have Affimilk at our disposal, but we had DHI. The 4 first months of lactation, they already produced 3 kilos of milk more. I'm talking about 1980. And we had less retained placentas, we had less metritis, and we had bigger offsprings, bigger calves, and easier birth. So it was enlightening. And the year after, we did the same thing with heifers. In the 3 weeks before calving. And so at that time, we already knew that in the Jordan Valley in Israel, cows really suffer from heat. We were at that time aiming all our calvings to the end of summer and the beginning of autumn, because in the summer, the cow would not conceive. And we're talking about animals that are were producing 8,000 kilos of milk per lactation, and And even though they had the very severe heat stress. And so I was born into it. And I think the first meeting with Israel was when he was young, student in the university. I think one of his projects was in my kibbutz.
Yeah, just to add to Shimon, this study described in 80 was I can call it a preliminary study because it opened the research which was later on my PhD, and I did in 83 the large study on cooling dry cows in Kibbutz Yavne, which is one of my publications in the Journal of Dairy Science, cooling dry cows. So the preliminary study was done by Shimon and his good colleague Katriel Tavori, which was he passed away many years ago, and they were a team to do this work.
Very interesting.
With us.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us, Shimon. Look forward to talking to you a little bit more. We also have Dr. Lance Baumgard with us. Lance, you joined us last year on the podcast and building on the conversation we had last year with you. So what are you drinking tonight, and any stories behind that?
Well, I'm currently in my office at Iowa State University, so it would be inappropriate of me, of course, to be drinking adult beverages. And I would never do that, Scott. Yeah, but if I was, I'd be drinking Redbreast 12. I enjoy bourbon and Canadian whiskeys, but have a fondness for Irish whiskeys. And Redbreast 12, if you ever get a chance, it is a smooth whiskey.
Yep, I've had it in Ireland, and as I recall, you were having that last year as well. So
it
good stuff.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, good. Tonight, my co-host is Dr. Glenn Ains. Glenn Ains is a technical service manager with Balchem. Glenn, I don't know how many times you've been here, but 2 or 3 times. So you must be enjoying yourself. So welcome back. And what are you drinking tonight? Any stories behind that?
Always good to be here, Scott. And as you know, I'm deep into the warm weather, so I'm drinking a little cranberry vodka and Sprite, just a little spritzer. It's one of my favorite drinks on hot, sweaty days here in Florida. So
awesome. So
what are you drinking, Scott?
Yeah,
what's up tonight?
Well, my son for Christmas bought me a little oak cask. And it's a kit to make your own bourbon. So I did that. And last week I harvested that. And so I'm drinking a Noah's Reserve. Noah's the name of my son. So cheers. Looking forward to a great
Awesome.
podcast, folks. Cheers.
Cheers, Scott.
Tonight's Pubcast toast is brought to you by NitroSure Precision Release Nitrogen. Maximize rumen microflora with the consistent release of NitroSure to turn up the dial on rumen efficiency and productivity. Visit balchem.com to learn more.
All right, Israel, to get us started, why don't you give us kind of an overview of the climate there in Israel and what the Israeli dairy farmers are dealing with?
Well, I described it in my lecture. Summer is different in the high, let's say, the mountain area and the Jordan Valley. It's totally different. The place where Shimon came from, which is in the Jordan Valley, cows suffer heat stress for almost 6 months per year, while in the mountains, great. But in the mountains, it will be not more than 2-3 months, and even in these 2-3 months, it is not all the time. So summers can be very variable, but the cooling system is the same, and the length of or the duration of using it is different.
So you talked a lot about during your webinar about mechanical cooling, use of water. What role does the facility design have in that, in cooling cows? And specifically, let me be a little more specific. Maybe this is also a question for Shimon, but I'm just reckoning back to some of the conversations that we had, is that you guys provide quite a large loafing area, if you will, under shade, which is different than what we do here. We have the free stalls, and y'all really don't have the free stalls there. What role does that play, if any, in heat mitigation?
Yeah, I think that there are a few factors. First of all, roofs are very high. A lot of space per cow, which let's say reduce the risk of one cow hitting another cow. Much better, let's say, natural wind if you have it in the compost barn farms. We try to, even though that the roofs are very high, we try to repaint the white the roofs from up every second or third year. Then reflection is better. But so this can help. But the problem is not even not climate. The problem is the cow, and the reason I'm visiting so frequently Europe now is not because climate changed in Europe so much, as cows changed in Europe so much. In the last 20 years, the European cow doubled its production. And as I showed you in my lecture, when we had a 25 kilograms cow, she could let's say resist 6 hours between one cooling session and another. And with 45 or 50 kilograms per day, generating more than double watts of heat, she cannot tolerate more than 3 or 4 hours. So the big change is not climatic change, but cow change, I would say.
So how does that affect your managing groups in Israel? If higher producing cows need more cooling, are you breaking them up into 2 or 3 groups based on production, or how do you manage that?
Look, the reality in Israel is that we don't have low producing cows. We don't divide cows according to groups, production groups, in order to cool them differently. We cool all the cows according to the high producing cows. So, we would say that most of the dairy farms in Israel are having one diet for all the herd. So there is no any reason to put cows in different groups for cooling them in different, let's say, intensities. So all the cows receive, first of all the cows are high producing cows. We dry off cows with more than 30 kilograms. So all the cows receive the same treatment.
Okay, makes sense.
Shimon, your comments though about days in milk is something I was wanting to ask Israel for a long time. Is that the winter to summer ratio would be, I would assume, heavily influenced by differences in days in milk between the two seasons. So, Israel, do you want to, or Shimon, one of you want to?
Yeah. I am responsible for the summer to winter ratio. Actually, I got an email from one of the participants asking this question. You are right, and in the NOAA, which is the herd management program in Israel, we divide it to different stages in lactation. So we have summer to winter ratio for different stages in lactation. So let's say 0, 50, 50, 100, 100, 200, 200 more. And then you reduce the risk of having a bias information. But we use also for once a year, the let's say the complete one with all the risks. But you see, for example, Zelim farm. I decided to show Zelim farm because I wanted to show what is the potential of cow cooling in a very extreme warm weather, which is the title of my lecture, and with very high milk producing cows. They are today in 50 kilograms per cow herd average. And this is done by very, let's say, very intensive cooling, as I described. But the idea of showing Zelim in my lecture was to show that it is possible. And I have a group of 15, 20 farms that every year by year, they are coming with the same results. You understand? So it's important to know that it is possible. Yes, we can.
Yep.
So it would also be defined. You need to define summer and winter, right? Because when do you define winter? Is it just based off of specific months? Are you doing temperature? You know what I'm saying?
Well, in Israel, it is January, March, and then it is July, September. But for example, when I started a project in North Mexico, in Torreon, we decided to have also June in one. So we had to add December in the other side to have 4 months versus 4 months. But it depends on climatic conditions. Sure. Yep. And there are places in the world that you cannot use summer to winter ratio. For example, in many parts of Brazil, I am working in Brazil and I co-owner of a company in Brazil. There are many places in Brazil that it's very difficult because you have summer and summer and summer.
Yeah,
exactly.
Israel, for those that didn't attend the webinar, do you think it'd be appropriate maybe just kind of back up, kind of give a definition of what the winter-summer ratio is and what that is and maybe some of the background for that?
We want to know first how much a farm is suffering from heat stress. And later on, when he implements cooling system, how much successful he is in mitigating heat stress. So we take the average of different parameters. It's milk production, it's fat, protein, somatic cell count, peak lactation, conception rate, and we relate the averages in summer and in winter. As summer numbers are close to the winter, it means that this farm is doing well. And if they are very far from it, like I showed the failing farms being below 0.9, they have to do a lot in order to improve. If you go to the article from United States and you compare the southern states to the northern states, you can see a big difference. The northern states are like Israel, which is much warmer, and the southern states are much below Israel. And they are like the failing farms in Israel. So this article shows that still U.S. dairy farms have to do a lot to improve themselves, as we did in the last 20, 30 years.
So if I understood you, the index is more than just simply the ratio of winter and summer milk. You're including other variables, milk protein, milk fat. Okay. Yeah.
Scott didn't give me more than 45 minutes, so I had to be very short.
It's also a situation which is specifically correct in Israel, that the milk consumption in the summer is higher, and the natural desire of the cow is to produce less milk in the summer. So we are going to fight the cow by cooling it. Sure. And it's not the same thing all over the world. For example, Israel sent me back in 1993 to Central America, which I spent 6 years in El Salvador. Over there, you have to cool cows 24/7 year-round.
So I think that's a great segue, gentlemen, into talking a little bit about, so what methods do you use there in Israel to cool cows? What are the most effective?
The most effective system is what I described as the direct cooling system, which is a combination of wetting and forced ventilation. Short wetting sessions with very intensive, strong wind speed in sequences. We found it relatively cheap to handle, easy to handle, and it is effective in let's say humid areas, because the alternative of trying to cool the air in humid conditions is very tough. You can do it, but you have to you have to cycle the wind inside the building so fast that you have to spend a lot of electricity. So a system that works very well in Saudi or in the Emirates or in Arizona will not work in most of parts of Israel. So we decided to go for the direct cooling system, and it works very well. And what I showed is that it is so cost effective that there is no another investment in the dairy sector that can be paid back so fast like cooling if you do it properly. But if you don't do it properly, as I showed, you lose your pants. Or you either do it well or don't do it.
I want to make a comment. We have tried cooling the environment of the cows to the extent that it's so foggy under the roof of the cows that the temperature outside is above 100 degrees, and inside the barn it was maybe 70. But when you look at the cows, they had to get rid of the humidity in the air. And therefore, this system, even in the driest weather in Israel, in the desert, it didn't work as well as direct cooling of cows.
Look,
So,
there is something else. United States, you have in most of the dairy farms in United States, you have a very cold winter and warm summer. So your buildings needs to be done first of all for the winter, like in North China, also North and other cool areas. In Israel, we have in most of Israel we have 4 warm months. So for these 4 warm months, we do not need to have buildings which are. We can have buildings with high roofs and much space per cow. So to cool this volume, these cubic meters, it's very expensive. So we go for a direct cooling system also because of this region, because the rest of the 8 months per year, we enjoy good buildings without any need of cooling. In Brazil, where the situation is different, we are trying to find a solution and change the space per cow between the warm and the cooler season by putting curtains, etc. But this is Brazil. Israel is different. We have clear summer, not very long in most parts of Israel, not in the Jordan Valley. And we have all the rest of the year is quite good. So we enjoy good housing to our cows, very comfortable.
Shimon, do you guys have feed available in those cooling pens?
no. In the holding pens or in a cooling pen, there is only water troughs. And the question is very to the point, because when we release the cows from the holding pen, they will go straight to the feed manger, and they will eat for about 20 minutes or half an hour. Then they will lie down chewing the cud, and by the time they get up, we have to bring them back to the holding pen.
Look, feeding is like what I showed about standing and laying down. If you cool properly the cow, although you make the cow stand more time, in the 24 hours, she will lay down more time. The same is with feeding. If you don't cool the cows and you provide feed all the days, they will eat less than if you take 6 hours from the eating time for cooling. The rest 18 hours, they will eat more.
More than that. If you have a cooling system in the feed manger, sometimes the cow will get up, she will stand in the feed manger, she would not eat, and after 10 minutes she will start chewing the cud, and she just come to the feed manger to cool itself. So It's the cow get used to it, and they would take their head out of the barn because the water don't they don't like the water on their heads.
I'm just curious if we've looked at this winter summer index in any form here in the United States as a guide for helping people understand cooling.
Yeah, yeah. I think Collier and others have kind of picked up on that a little bit. Like someone mentioned earlier in the webinar, it doesn't. I don't think it works quite as well in the Midwest where we have heat waves. The one metric I think it might work better in the Midwest, United States, is maybe like preg rate or conception rate, where it's a cumulative amount of time, but milk yield will go ebbs and flows with heat waves. So I'm not sure of its utility in the Midwest, but from a pregnancy perspective, I think there's some value there.
Yeah, as I watched his presentation, I kept looking at the milk production differences were relatively small from a percentage standpoint, but those conception rate differences were huge. They were 60, 70%.
We have similar swings in preg rates.
Yes.
Even at the Iowa State Dairy, it will be high 20s, low 30s in the winter and mid-teens in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
Lance, you said that you'll see volleys of milk going up and down depending on the heat waves that come through. And yet what Israel showed us in the webinar is that he's virtually able to mitigate all the impact of heat stress. And so how do we do that if you're having volleys of heat come through?
I think the physics the physics and approach is the same. Evaporative cooling, forced air works even in relatively high humid areas like Iowa. Now, does it work as well as it does in Israel or Arizona? No, you lose some efficiency, but evaporative cooling, I still think, is the primary method of mitigating heat stress even in relatively humid areas.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the extent of the heat stress and the length of the heat stress makes the Midwest dairy farmer think 7 times before he installs cooling system, and that's a pity really, because if he would look to his animals before they go down in milk, they will breathe heavily. If you just look at the cow, you don't have to measure temperature. You look at the cow, you see the movement of the belly of the lungs, and you will realize immediately that this animal or this herd is in stress. Normally, when we have the first cows not really panting, but somewhat more, instead of 40 breezes a minute, if you already see 50, for us, it's a time to start cool the cows. Mm-hmm. And once we start, we do not stop. We just intensivate the cooling practices as the summer goes on, and we reduce the amount of cooling sessions, or the length of cooling sessions, at the beginning of October, and we finish at the end of October, depending on the weather at the specific year. What we also see, if there is a big heat stress spell during, for example, September, we see drop in milk even in the farms that are good have good cow cooling practices. The difference between them and the other farms, it remains low in the milk for a couple of days, and then the heat spell is gone, and immediately the cows go up. while in the more moderate cooling farms, it will take them sometimes weeks and sometimes months until the cows, for example, last year, not last year, the year before, 1920, we had 3-week terrible heat stress in September. And all the country has gone down in milk like 3 or 4 kilos on the average.
Yeah, I think we're sometimes not proactive enough here in the U.S. in terms of cooling our cows. You seem to see that a lot. I don't know if that's just people not anticipating it, or they're concerned about the expense associated with it, or whatever. I just don't think we're generally speaking proactive enough, particularly in the north.
Yeah, I think
farmers think about expenses all over the world. The issue is to show them numbers. When I was in the ministry, I worked more on the physical and let's say physical aspect of cooling, how to cool the cows, when to cool the cows, how much to cool the cows. But when I retired, and my job will be consulting farms on how to cool cows, I understood that the first thing I have to do is to show them how much money it yields, and that was the time when I created with an economist this spreadsheet which calculates the cost effectiveness. And when we started putting the numbers just of feed and feed efficiency and total milk production, yet without any numbers on fertility and on health, which we are going to do now, we saw that the investment returns very, very fast. So what I'm doing today in my project is to talk money, because that's what you have to do, to talk money. It's also animal welfare, okay. It's also sustainability, okay. But farmer is interested first of all in money, and which I show him that he can make a lot of money. Or first of all, I show him that he is losing a lot of money by doing nothing. I published an article. One of the articles you have, Scott, is farmer, stop paying double taxes. You pay one tax, income tax, and you pay one tax to nature. And this tax to nature is a lot of money. Stop paying this tax at least. You cannot stop paying the income tax, but you can stop paying the tax to the nature. And then when we started putting numbers of cost of equipment and cost of operation, which is mostly electricity, we saw that the return is so fast that it is a pity. So I think that maybe you need in United States to dig much profoundly with your farmers in this topic, money. Americans are known as people that everything is calculated. So why don't you go and show them how much they are losing and how much they can stop losing? Because you don't make more money in summer. You just stop losing money when you cool the cows.
What Israel, you were saying that you pay a tax, but in reality you're going to pay a tax, particularly if you don't cool dry cows. You're going to pay that tax year after year after year because of the multi-generational effects that can occur if you don't cool those dry cows, in terms of cows in the future, that those calves now produce less milk, and that can go on for year after year after year, as Jeff Dahl's research has demonstrated.
Israel, I believe it was in your summary of the webinar, you talked about this investment, and that's a key, but there's also an element, you must do it right. You must use that investment correctly. Am I paraphrasing that right? And so if you wouldn't mind, maybe can you talk about what doing it right is, whether it's frequency and methodology and all those things.
Yeah, this is another article in the list I sent to you. It is called Wind, Water, Time, and cow. That's all you need in order to cool properly your cows. And when I say wind, is the wind speed of 3 meters per second to blow air and to evaporate the water. Water is good sprinkling, and I show pictures of well-socked cow and not well-socked cow. So if you use fine droplets and not enough pressure, these droplets will not penetrate, will not soak the cow, so you don't cool. The third one is time, and these are the 6 cumulative hours, because people think that if you cool the cows for 10 minutes, you did the job. But you cannot eliminate 3,000 watts of heat in 10 minutes. So you need a lot of time, and this is the article I described. And the last one is the cow. So you ask me what is this means, cow? I say I visit a lot of farms that have the sprinklers working, the fans working, and the cows laying down, which means that they don't make the effort to make sure that the cows are in the cooling side in the feed line when they are operating the system. So if you use these 4 pillars, you will get good cooling. It's so simple. It's so let's say obvious that sometimes I take out the few words that still remain in my head and say, why don't they understand it?
Yeah. I recall a trip I took to China one time, and we were at a very nice dairy, and the gentleman had this amazing cooling system with the big radiators at the end of the barn that would pull the cooled air across, and it was hot that day, and we were asking him about it, and so he decided to turn it on, which it should have already been on, and it worked amazing. How cool we and the cows got after he turned it on. So anyway, it's just a funny story.
It sounds funny, but this is the reality in so many farms, unfortunately.
Yeah. Israel, you made a comment about drinking water, which I would have a year ago totally agreed with you. Bob Collier and I got some data now that demonstrate in lactating cows, when they get heat stress, the lower producing cows will drink more, but the actual high producing cows drink less. Water consumption actually goes down, and I think Joe McFadden that also has some similar data now. So it's 2 different experiments kind of showing the same thing. So I wonder if our interpretation of drinking is dependent upon how much milk they're making. In other words, if a cow needs to maintain hydration, one easy way of doing that is just shutting off the mammary tap, right? Reducing milk yield is one way that she can maintain a healthy hydration. But and the reason I'm bringing that up is because one of the things I hear from Midwest farmers, especially, is they don't like cooling cows because it creates a sloppy dairy. The alleyways get sloppy and wet, and they have to pay to get rid of that water, and then the cows get dirtier and stuff like that.
Because they don't cool cows in the right spot. If they will cool them in a holding pen, they would not get the sloppy alleys.
So that's an interesting thing, Shimon. I don't know if it's a problem, but one of our, especially on larger dairies, they want their parlor used as much as possible. They rarely want the parlor shutting down. So that holding pen rarely has an open spot. You know what I mean? So They would need to create essentially a new completely pen for these holding areas.
This is what we do in Israel. I started doing it in Mexico because I had to cool cows in a 5,000 cows farms where they were milking for 23 hours in a carousel. So I another article in your in your list, Scott, about La Cantabra dairy farm in North Mexico. So we built special cooling yards, and we use them in order to let's say expand the time the cows are getting cooling when they are before and after milking session, and another pens for cooling the cows in between milking sessions. So everything is feasible, Lance. But what you say about drinking water, I will tell you how I came to this conclusion. When I did my PhD, I had two groups. One side cooled cows, another side non-cooled cows. And at that time, Professor Mimi Berman, that unfortunately passed away, told me, yeah, he passed away, 94 years old.
Oh,
he said to me, Israel, why won't you put a flow meter in each one of the sides, and then we will measure the amount of water consumed in one side, the control group, and the other side, which is the water troughs and the sprinklers. And at the end of the summer, we measured, and it was the same amount. Unfortunately, I was not clever enough to put it in one of my articles coming out from my PhD. But this evidence is the basis of what I'm saying. If you will come with new information, it will be very interesting. I didn't know it.
I'm very sorry to hear this about Mimi Bierman. He's
very Lance. It's maybe due to the difference in the genetics of cows. The cows that are producing more milk, their rumen is much more efficient, and therefore maybe they drink less water. I think one of your friends in Israel, you know Uzi Mualem, right?
of course.
So he has a lot of data about specific cows in the 20 odd years that he's measuring feed consumption and production. And he found extremely difference in efficiency of milk production of high-producing cows. So I think the question of how much water the cow drinks is a very important issue. And what you have found that farmers in the Midwest don't like to cool cows, and the other research that shows that cows that are producing more milk drink less water is very interesting.
Well, I don't know if I should say they don't like cooling cows. They don't like the having to pay to get rid of water, right? So when they see the waterers or the sprinklers running and there's not a cow underneath of it, it frustrates them. Right?
Yeah. Well, we have found in Israel also a solution for that. Sensors that will turn on the cooling system in the feeding manger only if there is 4 cows around the fan.
Yeah.
We have few farms that have installed these sensors. So in our technology, everything is available.
Feasible.
Just a matter of price. And I understand the farmer that don't like to see the sprinklers run off, and the cows are lying down in the cubicles.
Sure.
It's really it is frustrating.
So I assume you guys, or Israel, has looked at feed line cooling versus these holding pens that you're talking about, and you've decided that the holding pens is a better, more efficient, more profitable route.
It's more profitable, but at the end of the day, when production is going up, we would have to use them both. And we already have farms that are bringing cows into the holding pen between milkings, and they keep on cooling them when they come back to feed at the feed manger. This is these are not very popular, but I think that the farm that Israel did his research in Yavne is doing that for maybe 30 years now. They have a polygon, so they have 2 holding pens, and on top of that they have cooling system in the feed manger, including locks. So when the cows come from the holding pen, either from milking or from cooling, they will lock them down in the feeding manger for about 40 minutes, and then automatically will release them. So they've been using both systems for many years.
Actually, my answer was, if I'm limited, where I should put my first dollar, and then I say this is more efficient because in any case you need to put cooling in the waiting yard. You will not hold cows in summer in the holding pen without cooling. And if you have enough time and you don't have long distances, and you can bring the cows between milking sessions, it's fine, it's okay. But as Shimon said, we want to be on the safe side. And also in the Elim farm, they have, when cows go back from the cooling yard or the waiting yard after being cooled 6 times per day, they have a very effective system. They have a sensor for every fan. In that case, it's not sprinklers. It is misters in front of the fan, which gives a fine mist. But if this fine mist will be without the wind stream of the fan, it will blow in the air. But when it comes with the fan, it hits the cow and wets the cow somehow. Remember, the cows are coming back from the cooling yard; they are still a little bit wetted. So you add humidity, you add let's say moisture, and you cool the cows. So it costs this system costs not much, and you are on the safe side. And you could see the numbers of the Elim farm. They are much above. They are with almost 0 hours above 39.2, while in the other study that I showed, the good farms were 4 or 5 hours. And these 4 or 5 hours can make the difference in 10 percentage units or in 2 liters more of milk. So the clever farmers in Israel don't take the risk. They cool the cows obligatory, the 6 hours, and then they give an additional time for the cows if they want it. It's better to be more than short.
Yeah. Shimon, I've been to Ron Solomon, who you probably know, took me to a kibbutz near the Dead Sea, and it was the lowest dairy on earth. Is that your kibbutz that you're talking about?
No. He's 200 meters below me.
Look, in this farm you mentioned, they recorded 122 Fahrenheit last summer. I asked the farmer, "What are you doing there?" He said, "I am washing my cows day and night."
Duty.
Yeah, speaking of water, we know that water is at a premium there in Israel. So are there any concerns with using water to cool cows?
Look, I said it in my lecture. We are in another phase. We started desalinating water, and we have excess of water. All the big cities consuming this water, and we recycle 80%. We are number 1 in the world also in recycling water from the big cities. So we are not short in water anymore. But we all were raised, Shimon and myself, when we were young. Every class in school was save water. But today we don't have to save water, and more of that. We recycle even the water, or using in order to produce methane and then electricity. So it is not spending the water.
I think in 10 years, California will not suffer from water shortage. I have heard that they're doing very large projects in desalinating the ocean water. And at the end of the day, this is the destiny of all of us as changes in the world. And I remember the time that I came to California and they were irrigating alfalfa by flooding back in the 80s, but not anymore. And so I think Israel, because we have one city that is very close to the Red Sea, and we have dairies there, and we started to desalinate Red Sea waters, I think 40 years ago, or maybe 50 years ago. And by now, I think more than 50% of the water consumed in Israel is desalinated water.
And 80% of this water that we use in our houses is recycled for agriculture, and we pump it to the south of Israel. The Elim farm, for example, is in the middle of the desert, but not anymore, because it is now surrounded with orchards and with trees, and it changed climate there. Nights used to be very cool and dry, and now it is humid like in the
yes.
coastal part.
The Elim farm is very unique because for many, many years it is being managed by women for maybe 40 years. This is very unique.
Yeah, very interesting. Gentlemen, are there any big issues that we need to address before we close out here?
You have to cool cows.
Yeah.
Very well. Well, then we'll call last call and ask each of you to kind of give us one or two key takeaways from this that a dairy farmer or a nutritionist could use on their farm.
Tonight's pubcast stories are brought to you by Reassure Precision Release Choline. Reassure is the most researched encapsulated choline on the market today, consistently delivering results to your transition cows of higher peak milk, reduced metabolic disorders, and even in utero benefits to her calf, leading to growth and health improvements. Visit balchem.com to learn more.
So, and why don't we start, Glenn, why don't we start with you?
I'll kind of go back to my comment I said earlier about, the need to be a little more proactive in terms of, what our dairies are doing to cool cows. You might recall a few years ago, we tried to do kind of a series of weather reports where we looked out onto the future forecast and just tried to give people some sense for here it's coming, it's time to start doing something. And that's probably true. I think the other big challenge is, at least in the United States, we have a lot of different kinds of climates here, a lot of different cooling system needs, and for people to be able to figure out what system is best for their operation, most cost effective. And so where I used to think maybe we were about done doing cooling research, I start to, after this presentation by Israel, I started wondering, man, we got to go back to the drawing board and start looking at it some more. So that's my two bets, Scott.
I will tell you something. I was asked, and I am heading a scientific committee for the IDF, and we have 2 years to present our work report. And this report is exactly what you said. Our mission is to let's say screen the different climatic conditions, actual and expected in the future, and cooling systems, and try to recommend the appropriate cooling system for every kind of climate and dairy farming. So this team, a scientific team, consists of 10 experts. One of them is Albert De Vries from Florida. Mm-hmm. And we are working, trying to bring world farmers the message of how to cool properly the cows wherever you live.
Excellent.
And also we will include this economical chart, in order to help farmers make the calculation, because the only way to convince farmers to invest and make effort, because it's not only to invest money, but to make the effort to cool the cows and resolve the problems of mud, etc. The only way to convince him is to show him how much money he will save.
Very well. Shimon, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think coming from the practical dairy farming, for me, the main part is looking at the cow. If you look to the cow, she will tell you exactly what she needs, especially in terms of cooling, because the amount of heat the cow produces and the limitation of sweating will tell you exactly what she needs. And if you do it right, you will see it right away on the cow. I have one farm that had very bad cooling system until a year ago. Tel Yosef, because they have a small holding pen with a low roof. They could not use the holding pen, and it took me half a year to convince them to put in the cooling effective cooling system in the feed manger. And last year in January they were producing 35 kilos of milk. This year they have produced 40 kilos of milk. And so this is the extent of changes that we still see in Israel when a dairy farmer that he has to invest, and it was heavy investment, okay, because now the fens are very expensive. He used the fens with the flippers, and but you can see after a year, after one summer of using, he will see the difference. And last December, I visited the farm and I saw cows breathing heavily. This year, even in September, at the end of the summer, the cows were they were comfortable. So cooling cows, you come from the research. I come from the dairy. And my advantage that when I look at the string of cows, I know what they should look like. I know what they need. And this is something that is not easy to teach in university. And so what Israel is offering, textbook to know what the cow needs in every part of the world as far as cooling is needed.
All right. Thank you, Shimon. It's been great seeing you again. Look forward to seeing you in person sometime soon. Lance, any final words from you?
Yeah, I kind of agree with almost everyone. I think Shimon mentioned earlier about the Israeli nutritionists. I think they could also use some more information about how feed supplements can help, like you mentioned earlier, right? They're not
about... Tell this to Ron Solomon.
I'm going to send Ron an email right now. There's no magic bullet, right? But proper nutrition and proper nutritional strategies can be a key component of a summer strategy.
It is.
Yeah. Thank you, Lance. And Dr. Flamenbaum, I'll give you the floor for the final time.
Well, I think that I already said the most important thing is do things properly. The knowledge exists. There are so many articles, so many research reports. Everything is known. Everything is written. Just do it, and do it according to the recommendations. But in order to convince people to do it, you have to stimulate them. And I said before, what is the way to stimulate them? It's to show them the cost effectiveness of the effort they are going to do. That's it.
All right. Well, thank you for that.
It works in so many countries. I'm running projects that it is significantly working.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Flamenbaum. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us here today. I think we can all agree that heat stress can have a devastating impact on our animals as well as our pocketbook. And the one thing, that my key takeaway from Dr. Flamenbaum is that it's completely possible to mitigate the impact of heat. And so, there's some steps we've got to take, but I'm certainly enthusiastic about that. So also wants to thank our loyal listeners for once again spending some time with us here at the pub. And we hope to see you next time here at the Real Science Exchange, where it's always happy hour and you're always among friends. All right,
Cheers.
folks. Cheers.
We'd love to hear your comments or ideas for topics and guests. So please reach out via email to anh.marketing@balchem.com with any suggestions, and we'll work hard to add them to the schedule. Don't forget to leave a 5-star rating on your way out. You can request your Real Science Exchange t-shirt in just a few easy steps. Just like or subscribe to the Real Science Exchange and send us a screenshot along with your address and t-shirt size to anh.marketing@balchem.com. Balchem's Real Science Lecture Series of webinars continues with ruminant-focused topics on the first Tuesday of every month, monogastric-focused topics on the second Tuesday of each month, and quarterly topics for the companion animal segment. Visit balchem.com/realscience to see the latest schedule and to register for upcoming webinars.